Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch 313, subsection 11. So up until now, we've been talking about what is the story with doors that are first we spoke about infrequently used doors, and in what cases, if it has a recognizable hinge, if it doesn't have a recognizable hinge, if it's hanging, does it have to be hanging such that it clears the ground, or that it doesn't? So basically, we said if it has a recognizable hinge, or where a hinge was, so then it's okay, even if it drags on the ground. If it's tied up in such a way that it doesn't touch the ground, doesn't even need a hinge. Or if it's a doorway which is used regularly, then it doesn't have to have it doesn't have to be tied, and it doesn't have to be have a recognizable hinge. And in fact, even if it's completely separated and not tied at all, since it's a regular used door, so it doesn't look like you are doing the malacha of baina. And as we know, a partition, a vertical partition, that's temporary. You're allowed to put up, so long as it doesn't change the halachic boundaries, like building a sukkah or something like that. Even though we learned in the Gemara, right, there's the case where they put up the vertical boundary, the window that changes it from being, which the Magen Avram holds you can do, but it seems to be not because he holds you're actually changing the boundary, but rather you're doing something that just stops something from happening in the future, rather than does anything now. But anyways, all the above, Yud Aleph, v'chol zeh, all of this, b'delish yesh lo askupa hatachtena. This is all talking about a doorway which has a bottom, a threshold, shezeikven isa aleha, that you prop the door on it. She'askupa muchachas al adeles shehiyasuyil in ila, because this threshold, it proves, meaning it visually displays, obviously, that this is a door which is made to be closed, and it's not something that's for building. This is a visual cue that lets us know this. But if it does not have a threshold, and when we close it, you're putting the door directly on the ground, right? So let's say you have just the ground. Let's see, the doorway just starts, right? Like if you think of like a tiki hut or something like this, right? There's just the ground, and then there's no threshold. It's just like it goes from the ground like this. So in such a case, where you're putting the door directly on the ground, and when you open it, you uproot it, essentially, meaning you remove it, you lift it up from the ground. Being that it does not have, how would you say the tzura, like the visual of the what's the right word? What's that?
Like specific source of the frame.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
usually just means the doorway.
A sort of means like the look. It means the look of, really. It
the form.
Doesn't have the form of, yeah.
Right. Here, this translates the form of an entrance.
Okay, yeah. So, but meaning it does not look like an entrance, because
I would say more. I feel like it doesn't have the outline.
Yeah. The shape. It doesn't have the shape of a door. So, ein nailin ba. We cannot close it. We cannot use this door to close it. Afilu yesh lo tzir, even if it has a hinge, because that which we said before, that a hinge acts as a visual cue to the fact that this is a door, is specifically when it's clear that it's a door.
Well, it's interesting because the note here, he has it a little different. He Badafka says it has a hinge, but the hinge is just not connected to the door frame, so the door does not revolve on it. So he's trying to say that we're talking about where it's clear that it's a door, but it doesn't have the function.
Doesn't have function, right? So I'm saying therefore the hinge does not, because remember, you're not actually building here. That we've crossed that
No,
out.
what I'm saying is though, but he seems to say that the door itself has this visual cue, but it doesn't have the
It
visual
doesn't have
cue
the
that has the
corresponding right. It
functionality
doesn't have the
of
corresponding cue.
functional door.
Right,
It's
but
clear that the piece of wood is for a door, but
right,
it
but
bottom
it's
line,
not clear that this is a
it's not
doorway.
connected.
Right. So,
It's
but
not
again,
right.
this is all about visual
Gotcha.
perception. So even though the door itself has the visual perception that it's a door, but the doorway must also have a visual perception that it's a doorway, meaning it has to be clear that you're putting the door in a doorway. Because I'll give you an example. I remember back in the late 80s in California. So that was back when my father had the what do they call those houses they build out of recycled stuff and bottles, motherships or something, green motherships or whatever. So my father's sukkah was like a green mothership. It was made out of he found a piece of 2x4. He found a piece of, I used a door frame, a door, a thing, but it was actually baina. He wasn't using it as a door. He was meaning if you take a door that's clearly a door, and you use it as a permanent building, you've just done the Torah prohibition of baina.
Earth ships. That's the word you're looking for.
Earth ships. Yeah. So he had earth ship sukkahs.
Nice. I like it.
It was made out of like an old rotted bookcase, and then he would bang a 2x4, and then we need then you put 3 strings across to make sure that it's halakhically considered one wall.
Well, which is why we said way at the beginning of all this that if it's used taka for something halachic like a sukkah or an eruv, no matter what it is, even if it's a keli, right, like a door or whatever, it's a problem because you're not allowed to do that because then suddenly it becomes more than a door. It becomes an actual structure.
But I think even that is only rabbinical because you're doing it temporarily. In other words, any temporary, but part of the rabbinical, so the rabbinical thing of temporary, they also didn't allow certain things. I don't think that's part of the Torah baina. Minatayra, it's not baina if it changes the halacha together. I don't think.
I don't know. I'll have to look back because I think it was there. I said, but I don't know.
I think it might not be, but in either case, that's if you're putting it permanently there, like not because remember there it was talking about when you're temporarily putting up this sukkah wall. It was definitely talking temporarily only, not permanently. But in either case, if you use it permanently,
no. What I'm saying is, okay, maybe you're using temporarily, but I'm saying is, I think halachically it's still considered real baina because it has this halachic ramification. It suddenly changes, and now it's an eruv, or now it's a sukkah.
Right, but if it's temporary, it's still temporary. But it's more like it's a lot more like building because it changes.
But it has a real change.
It does.
That's why I think it's a very nice. I don't know.
But at the same time, it's not permanent. Generally speaking, for the Torah prohibition, it requires permanence.
Interesting.
And then there's other things that are similar to or look like, etc. So like this, so the halachic thing I think is one of the things that's similar to or look. It's similar to, as opposed to being the thing itself. But anyways, kol she'ein tziveva saltzira. As long as it does not turn on its hinge, obviously it doesn't mean it turns on its hinge because you're not actually allowed to put in the hinge on Shabbos. But meaning, as long as it doesn't have a hinge that it could turn on. Even if it's not mamish sitting on the ground. Right, so we said before if you're propping it on the ground, but let's say it's actually higher than the ground. Even if it's made to go in and out regularly, you still cannot use it if it does not have a bottom threshold. And there are those that allow, if in the case that, meaning remember they don't allow all the time. So, for example, if you have such a thing and it's used infrequently, but it has a hinge on the door, this is never allowed. However, if it is frequently, you go in and out of it, then there are those that allow it, and we can be lenient, being that this is a in this matter, being that it is a rabbinical prohibition, being that the problem here is that it looks like baina rather than it actually is baina. Now, I guess the reason, even if it's in theory here, if you don't go in constantly in and out, So it's even if it's going to stay there for a long time, so it has the element of permanence. But the other element that's required for Baina is, I think, that it has to be affixed. So that's why it's not a Torah prohibition, this door, even if it's not on a constant basis, because at the end of the day, it's a door, it's a thing that comes in and out. So it's something that's a rabbinical prohibition of looking like Baina, but being that it's not affixed. Now, on the other hand, if you were to take this same door, or any door, even a door in an allowable doorway, and you attach the hinges, that is actually a prohibition of Baina, because you're actually permanently affixing a door to a structure. Notes.
No. Okay, so I said one. But different things are just clarifying things. The above threshold. We're talking about a horizontal block, just to clarify what we mean by threshold. Just defining it. A horizontal block in which the door frame is erected. It doesn't revolve around the hinge, as interpreted. That's basically based on the interpretation of the Rif and the Rosh and Rabbi Asher. It doesn't have the form of an entrance, evidenced by the fact that it doesn't have a threshold. So it's used frequently to enter and depart, even though these are all factors that would imply that the entrance is used to enter and depart, and thus the door will be open and closed frequently. Closing it resembles building since the entrance lacks a threshold. So now you suddenly completed this thing. This lack. And then we said, even though lacks a threshold,
So it's not just a matter of looks, it's you're actually completing the doorway. You're interesting.
You're completing the wall.
Right.
You're completing the wall. If it's a doorway, then it's not a problem. The problem is,
I'm saying, is this
the fact that it doesn't have a threshold.
Is it a matter of perception, or that you're actually doing it?
Interesting. So I think that's why to be machmir.
Yeah.
Even though it has a hinge and it's above the ground and it's frequently used to go in and out, but the fact is, it resembles building. It still says in the note. According to the note, it's still messy. It still resembles building because it lacks a threshold. So you're closing the wall.
Right.
So that's not an issue. Then there are those who permit it, though, if it's frequently used to depart, even though it lacks a threshold. Why? Because, as we said in the previous sif, since the door is likely to be open frequently, rather than make a permanent partition, one is merely making a temporary partition. Basically, the Eshmatirin are saying it's still very clear, even though it doesn't have a threshold, it's still very clear. So we're not worried that it looks like whatever. And again, and the Alter Rebbe finishes off, and he seems to lean that way. He says leniency may be shown because it's rabbinic. So because this whole thing's just a mechse, so it's rabbinic.
Right. So it must be just a perception of not that he's actually completing a wall, because that would be deraisa. That wouldn't be a rabbinic. So right. Okay.
12. Welcome, Ira.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Okay, that's 11.
Yep, that's 11. Now we're up to 12.
V'chein deles ha'osi miluach echad. So too, a door that is made from one board. It wouldn't necessarily apply today, because it's talking about basically like an unfinished door, not a door that looks like a door. Back then, that's how doors were made. Whereas nowadays, it's common to have a single piece of wood. In fact, if this, not only is it common to have a single piece of wood, it comes as a door. And sometimes in a frame. That would be a problem, though, if it comes in a frame. So too, a door that is made of one board, when you open it, and when you open it, you lift it, you remove it. Being that it is not similar to other doors. You do not use this to close the doorway. Even if it has a hinge, as long as it is not actually on the hinge. And even if it's higher from the ground, even if it has a threshold, even if it's made for going in and out regularly. So meaning, even if you've checked all of our above check boxes.
That's why they call it door la door.
Door la door, yeah. So even if you've done all the check boxes, right? It has a hinge. But if it's but it has a hinge, but a non-connected hinge. If it's actually connected on a hinge, and it's sitting on its hinge, then it's not a problem. We're talking about when this is a disconnected door. So even if it has a hinge or
it's unhinged.
Unhinged. So yeah, it's become the situation has become unhinged.
Hey, there's only one comedian today.
What's that?
He tried to make another joke. I said there's only one comedian here
No,
is that how it is?
No, get used to it. There's
today. Go ahead. Everybody wants a piece of this Mendel's
wants a piece of the action, yeah.
Right.
So but once you go through that door, so anyways, so let's say it has a hinge and it's or a recognizable place where it had a hinge, and it has a threshold, and it's made for going in and out regularly. However, being that it is a board. Now, by the way, today this would apply too if you're using. It wouldn't apply with a single board door because that looks like a door and it's recognizable as a door. But let's say, for example, you have a board, a piece of plywood that has hinges. Maybe it was attached before, now it's not attached anymore, but the hinges are still on it, and it has a threshold and everything. No good. Why? Because it looks like you are putting a board in the wall. It looks even more like the malacha of building than the other ways. However, the same, like we said before, that in this as well, there are those who allow it if it is a regularly used door. And why is this issue of a regularly used door so important? Because then everybody knows that it's a door. So all these other things, it doesn't look like a door because of this. It doesn't look like a door because of that. It doesn't look like a door because of the other. But everybody knows it's a door. So who cares if it looks like a door? And v'yesh lahakol b'divrei seifrim, and being that this is a rabbinic prohibition of looking like a malacha, not being the malacha itself, we can be lenient based on this opinion notes.
Yeah, the only note really is just the fact that at the beginning you said since this door doesn't resemble other doors, you cannot close an opening even when it has a hinge as long as it does not revolve in that hinge. So just explaining that in the Talmudic and then subsequent eras, it was common to have doors made of several vertical boards. So what I imagine is, like the kind of doors you'd see like in a tiki hut or whatever, like the simple, boards up.
Or alternatively, like think of a wood fence, gate.
Wood fence, a gates, right? Yeah. But we're talking about a structure that would have I guess some gates have a threshold, and Taka, you'd have to put a mezuzah on it. Right. Some people don't realize, but I mean that's something that would be in a building.
Kind of door, it's made out of vertical boards, and
So doors of one solid board were not common, and closing an entrance with one could be seen as erecting a partition. Basically, anyone who would schlep some big solid board, it looked like they were making a wall. So who cares that it was a doorway? But clearly, this guy wants a wall over here. He's got this whole solid door thing going on. What's he doing?
And Mexico's going to pay for it.
Yeah, this guy's trying to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. But good luck,
Right.
Right.
I don't even know if that's funny anymore. No. Anyway, Yud Gimel.
The timing was perfect.
Yud Gimel.
It was good. It was good. It was a good one.
However, a door that is made from many boards, and it has a threshold, it's everybody holds that you're allowed to always to close with it, to use it to close the doorway when we're talking about an opening that is made for regular going in and going out, regular entry and exit. Even if you remove it and you uproot it, so to speak, that's what eikenis. That means if you remove it completely when you open it, it is not tied there at all. And even if it has no recognizable hinges or place of hinge, as is explained before. And this same would hold true if it's not a door that is made of boards that are connected to each other, but rather the boards are separate boards. And there are grooves. Chakuk means carved, but it means like the grooves, carved out grooves. On top and on bottom. That you insert these boards into it. Since the doorway is closed with several boards, they are considered as if they are one door that is made of a lot of boards. And you're allowed to close with them. Even though you're removing these boards individually, you're removing them when you are opening it. Even though they don't have a recognizable hinge or place of hinge, so long as they are a doorway which is made for regular exit and entry, or entry and exit rather. Notes.
Yeah, the notes.
Nothing.
There's one basically as we explained above. It says that was back in Yud. That's it.
Yeah,
just a reference.
Yudalid 14. Kol dalsas hakelim, all doors of vessels. Right, meaning now up until now we've been talking about structures. Right.
Yeah, so the way they translate it here is storage units.
It could be.
I mean, essentially, what kind of kalim that have doors, I guess, makes sense.
I don't know, a toy microwave.
Okay, I guess.
I guess you could technically store little doll shoes in there or something. But anyways, the reason I use vessels because it's not about the fact that it's a storage unit. It's there's the halachic differentiation between it being a structure or a vessel, that the halacha of baina of building applies to any modifications being made to the ground or anything connected to the ground. Or alternatively, any vessel, like you said before, that's over 40 saw, that is like a refrigerator, that's a certain size, is also considered for those purposes to be connected to the ground. However, removable items, they have a different rules, and the rules of movable items, it's actually not as much a problem of we're not worried about baina. We are worried about something else. We're not worried about building. We are worried about finishing touches, which is a different malacha, which is makah bepatish, putting the driving the final nail, but meaning finishing touches. So that's why it's a little bit of a change here from we were talking before. So the rules are a little bit different, because before we were talking about building, and now we're talking about finishing touches on a vessel. So migdal, like a chest or a box or a closet, that they have doors on the side, and they have two hinges, that you have two heads that poke out of the door, right? One that sticks above, that sticks into they call it like the lintel and the threshold, but meaning it goes into the top of the opening of this unit, and one that goes into the bottom, and then it opens on it, right? If the bottom hinge, right, the bottom peg that comes out all the way out of its place, you're not allowed to put it back. Gezeda Shema Yiska. It is a they were worried that maybe you will wedge it there, which wedging is a big problem. That when he wedges it there strong, the makovis vegarzen with a hammer or an axe, in such a way that it cannot. Interesting. That's right. There's different. There's two different. Maybe it depends on how big it is. We'll see in the notes. And he will be chayav if he puts it in such a way that it can't come out of there. Now he's chayav because of either building, like will be explained, or because of finishing touches, like will be explained in the next Siman. So that's if the whole thing came out, the whole bottom hinge came out, right? So you have this door, and it has a thing on top and a thing on bottom that goes into holes. And now we're talking this bottom one came out of its hole completely. But if part of it came out, it only partially came out. You can push it until it goes into its place. We're not worried that maybe he will wedge it. Because he doesn't really need it so much. Since it has not completely come out of the hole. So that's the bottom one. If the top one came out even partially, also you cannot push it and return it to its place, because we're worried that maybe you will come to wedge it. Because the top one you have to push harder than the bottom one. Because when the top one is in its place, the bottom one automatically, just because of gravity, right? And if assuming we have a shelf which is level and plumb, etc. If your top one is in the place, the bottom one is going to be very easily to stay in its place. Whereas if the top one comes out, the bottom one's not going to keep the top one, because the top one's going to want to fall to this way or that way. Notes.
So we started off where it said, the first. Okay. So now let's just look at the figure. It's a good one here. Okay, here we go. So with regards to striking with a hammer, makah b'patish, right? So by finishing it off, basically you might forcefully stick it back into place so it won't slip back out. That would be considered makah b'patish, as explained back in Shin Beis. So basically, it's the pattern of craftsmen who fashion metal utensils to strike the surface of a utensil lightly with a hammer after having completed fashioning it. And striking it in this manner will straighten any irregularity. Striking in this manner thus represents the completion of fashioning the utensil. Meaning most of the putting it in, wedging it in is with your hands, but it's that little tap. And that's what makah b'patish is all about. So it's considered a primary category of forbidden labor, because it was performed in the fashioning of these sanctuaries kalim. That's how they did it when they built the Mishkan kalim. Whenever one performs any act that involves the completion of the fashioning of a utensil and its final adjustment, that concluding act. So this is just explaining makah b'patish, considered forbidden labor. But then, and then it says, as we'll explain in Shin Yud Daled, so it says over there, the Alter Rebbe states that according to some opinions, one who puts together a utensil is liable, not of course for boina, but for makah b'patish, because he completes a task. That's just getting into the whole thing even though it's just a keli, it's makah b'patish. Boina, putting together a keli is not boina, but it is makah b'patish. So
the basic differentiation between it is a boina or makah b'patish is the size of it. Basically, is it something that's considered a mechuber l'karka, or is it something that's considered a vessel?
Yeah, well, for the most part, I would say it's one of the things that they say about umbrellas, that it's opening an umbrella is a problem of more of boina, even though it's small and it's not mechuber l'karka, but that's because it's something that's above your head. So again, we get back to even when you're doing something, even though it's small and it's not mechuber l'karka, but because it's this overhanging roof you're making, so then it suddenly becomes more like boina. But for the most part, if it's a thing, especially when it comes to doors and boxes. Yeah, when does it go from being a storage? Because honestly, you have large storage units, people have in their backyards. If you take the roof off of that, you could make it into a sukkah.
Right.
But big enough cabinet. I mean, people do it with refrigerator boxes, and come on, it's a box. I mean, it's a box that can fit in my trunk. But people take refrigerator boxes and they they keep the open part open, and then they cut out a doorway, and you make a sukkah out of it for your traveling sukkah. So, and that's, I mean, it's not directly mechubed the karka, it just sits on the karka, but that so yeah, for the most part, that's what seems to be. But maybe it's just like you said, it's mefsek kabbalah. It's not maybe all those things. Even the umbrella is more of a derabanan. It's not actually a deiraisa.
Right.
But we saw in general. I just wanted to point out how we did see there's something unique about, even before, there's something unique about a roof, a tent, an oil. Making a tent seems to be more unique in regards to the fact that it would seem to be more like a keli, but no, it's still considered baina.
Right.
Even though it's
right. I mean, and the
fair.
thing is also there's another interesting difference here. Is over there we were worried about the mechze, that it looks like in this case it's a gzeira shema. It's we're worried that he will come to. So it's a different. So that's why in the above cases, there was so much that hinged on. Sorry, I just realized the pun in that. But there was so much that it hinged on whether or not of what the perception of it is, what it looks like. Where here it's about when are we worried that you will come to do something, rather than so much that worrying about what is it looking like.
Right.
That's the 14.
Yeah, now we're up to Tesla.
Tesvav 50. Now, how a door that does not have a hinge, right? It doesn't have like the dowel or peg that comes up, not on the top and not on the bottom, but rather in the middle, right? Meaning like on the side. That in the middle, right, it goes up one head goes up, and then and across from it there's a hole in the mezuzah, in the doorpost, or on the side. So meaning you have, like, for example, your box like this, and then here in the middle there's a hole, and then there's a peg that in the door on the side over here. So in this case, now remember, if it's not on a hinge, if this is not a door, if there's only one hole here, that it can't hinge on it. It's not, but rather it's just when you put it in, that hole helps it stay put. It helps it from falling out. So it's made to put it and remove it, put it and remove it, put it and remove it, as opposed to the other one that it's not made to put it and remove it. That door is really made to, when it has the hinge on top and on bottom, those are made to stay there, and it's made to open it and close it swinging. In this case, it's made to open it via moving the board. Even though it's even so you're not allowed to put this peg into its hole on Shabbos, because we worry about that you will come to do it in the case of the other door that has the regular hinges. Which is an interesting thing, because this would seem like a shvus d'shvus, right? Gzeira on gzeira. I think when we got to this in Mishnah Berurah, I think there was two explanations of it. One of them was that it's not a separate gzeira, but it's all in the same. It's all in the original gzeira. It falls all in the same box. Aval b'yomtiv mutar, but on yomtiv you're allowed to do it. Mishum simchas yomtiv. Now we're only talking about this type of door, not both doors. We're talking about the one that has the middle hinge. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to do it because of the joy of Yom Tov, like will be explained in 5:19. My math's getting better. Yeah.
Look at you. Okay, so the only notes really are on the end, basically. If it was a Yom Tif, it would be mutter. He just wanted to point out there are certain limitations, however, as explained in the source cited in the next sentence. In 590, there are limitations, even though it's Yom Tif. And then he says in that source over in 590. Storekeeper's counter. Storekeepers permitted to remove and restore so that people will be able to purchase spices and the like for Yom Tif. So on Yom Tif, people can come pick up spices. He can move the door so people can come get spices on Yom Tif. That's what it seems to say. Purchase spices on Yom Tif, but I guess they'll pay later or whatever. I don't know how that works. I guess we'll see over maybe in 519.
Like the Shabbos Mashka store or whatever.
I don't know that story.
I don't no, there's such what do you call it?
You're saying such a scenario.
Where there's like in other words.
Well, I heard there were certain stories, by certain Farbrengens somehow.
I'm not going to say what the story is, because I don't know what the exact story is, and if I mess it up,
I've heard the line said that they're like by certain Farbrengens, I don't remember what, but certain situations, Shabbos Farbrengens, where suddenly there was more mashke in 770 that wasn't there before, whatever. It's not talked about how it ended up there,
right?
Anyway, I just have to give you a heads up. I may have to cut out early. My stomach has been off all day. I may have some sort of like food poisoning or something. I don't know what's going on.
Yum.
But it's in a lot of pain. So.
All right. So let me know. You're gonna cut out now, or
I'm not sure.
All right. Let's move a little bit, and then we'll see when you got.
As long as you don't check out.
No. V'chol ze lahachzir hadloses. This is all to return the doors, meaning you're putting the door back when it came out. But to remove them, you can do it with no problem. So long as they're not forcefully held in place. And there's no prohibition here against demolishing, right, which is the opposing malacha to binyan, to building. Why? Because building and demolishing does not apply by vessels. So when you have a problem of building, then you have a problem of demolishing. However, where building does not apply, demolishing does not apply. So meaning when you have a sort of structure, or let's say even it's a refrigerator or something like that, that does fall under binyan, that does fall under the category of building, then taking it apart is demolishing. However, there isn't an opposing thing like that to makabeh patish, like unfinishing the touches. I'm unfinishing touches. But rather that's only by binyan. So by kalim there is no demolishing. Aval imim tkun b'chezek. And here's what's interesting. He says, "Ein binyan is still of a kalim." There isn't, but if it's wedged strong, yesh b'frikas mishum seisir k'meshias bar. So this is a note I'd like to see, because he starts off by saying there is no the building or demolishing by vessels, and then he completes it that if they're wedged strongly, then taking it apart is seisir.
Yeah, he doesn't explain. He just says we're going to see it in Sif Chof Beis as well as in Siman Shin Yudalid 314 subsection 17. So we'll see it later in this chapter. Especially because it's later in this chapter, he probably didn't feel it necessary to bring up. If it was in a different chapter, they probably would have brought it in the note right there. But I guess for the most part, there's no such thing as Sefer by Kalim. But there is a way that there could be Sefer by Kalim if it was firmly embedded within the units somehow. But see exactly the details later. Okay, 17.
However, if you have the door of a house or a pit or a cistern, not a brother and a cistern, different thing. Or vessels which are connected to the ground. So let's remember that a vessel, there's two things. One of the things is its size. But like, for example, we said it has to be 40 saw or bigger to be considered building. That's only something that is not connected to the ground, like a refrigerator is not a vessel, but rather it's considered a thing that's connected to the ground. However, something smaller than that that's actually attached is also considered connected to the ground. Well, because it is. Kegain, for example, Lul Shulchan Negalim, a chicken coop, right? Which you could have a chicken coop that's smaller than 40 saw, but it's actually attached to the ground. Also, you can't place it there, and you can't remove it from there. That anything that is connected to the ground, regardless of size, that's my own parentheses, he doesn't say that here, but regardless of size, is building and demolishing. It applies. Therefore, therefore, this thing that in the summer it is customary to have a non-Jew remove the windows. Now remember, we're not talking here about like before. We're talking about a temporary that you're putting up a temporary cover that you can even do yourself. You don't even need it's regardless of a non-Jew. And also, let's remember what we spoke about. Well, this is a while ago. That the general rule. There are exceptions, but the general rule is anything you are not allowed to do. You're not allowed to have a non-Jew do it for you. And in fact, there are instances where if the non-Jew even did it by himself for you, it is prohibited to benefit from what he did for you. So, just again, those rules are discussed more at length there, so we won't go into the whole thing. But the general rule is that what you cannot do, you're not allowed to have a non-Jew do for you on Shabbos. And so therefore, the fact that they remove the windows on Shabbos, lo yafeh meisim, this is not a good thing that they are doing. Because in moving this window, there is an obligation of a chatos offering for the Jew. What does it mean? What is he trying to tell you? Is a chatos offering, meaning it is a Torah prohibition. For rabbinical prohibitions, you don't have an obligation of a chatos sacrifice. So if a Jew were to remove this window, it's a Torah. This is a Torah level prohibition. Shehu seiser al minas livnes, because he is demolishing with the intention of rebuilding. Because he's going to put them back after this. We haven't gotten so much into seiser yet, into demolishing, but presumably the issue of demolishing, if you just demolish something, it's maybe only a rabbinical issue, whereas demolishing for the sake of rebuilding, because like in the Mishkan, when they would demolish something, they weren't demolishing and just demolish it, they were demolishing it so that they can go ahead and build something else there. So that makes it a Torah prohibition. And this window, because it's made to be there, obviously you're going to go and return it there, and putting this window in there, again, we're not talking about a temporary thing. We're talking about something that's made to be there for long times. So perhaps our double hung windows, for example, that maybe only every few months you pull it, like you have those little things that you release and you pull it out, like meaning not just open and close it, but you take it out of the window frame in order to clean it. So they would have them like remove it, something like that.
Thing it like pops out.
Yeah. But it's not part of its regular use of opening and closing. It does pop out, but generally it's made to be there. And it only has this feature that you can pop it out, just like if you want to clean it or something like that. Or I guess similar to the big windows that you were talking about before, that like if you want to get a piano in there, you can remove these giant windows, but generally they're not made to open and close. Same sort of thing. So this is a Torah prohibition. So therefore, if he tells a non-Jew to do it, it is a complete rabbinical prohibition, right? Because telling a non-Jew to do a Torah prohibition for you, this is a rabbinical prohibition. Meaning you doing it is a Torah prohibition, telling him to do it is a rabbinical prohibition. The eine shvus de shvus. And it is not a shvus of a shvus, which was allowed in a place where you have discomfort. Meaning, For example, if you have a rabbinical prohibition, let's say there's something that if I did it, it was a rabbinical prohibition. That's rabbinical prohibition number one. Now the fact that I tell a non-Jew to do it, that's rabbinical prohibition number two. So it's two rabbinical prohibitions, one on top of the other, which is something that we only see by Shabbos, because we're very stringent by Shabbos. I don't believe that it's in any other places. In most places, a rabbinical prohibition, if there's a rabbinical prohibition, you're allowed to just have a non-Jew do it for you. It's not and it's not a problem as much. In Shabbos, you cannot have a non-Jew do even a rabbinical prohibition for you. So it's a shvus, a rabbinical on a rabbinical. However, however, they were more lenient than that in a place where there's discomfort. But in this case, the Alter Rebbe is saying people are making a mistake doing this, because this is not such a case. In this case, you're not allowed to do it even from discomfort, because it's only one level. It's only you have a Torah obligation, and now you're telling a non-Jew to do it. That's rabbinical level number one. It's not a rabbinical level number two. What is it called? It's not like a second-degree felony. It's a first-degree felony.
There you go.
Misdemeanor. It's more of a misdemeanor.
A Mr. Demeanor or a misdemeanor? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
no. Trust me. In most cases, the missus is demeanor, but
hey, each to their own. Everyone's got.
So that's and according to those that say now according to those that say, there's an opinion that holds that demolishing for the sake of rebuilding afterwards, you are only obligated from the Torah if your intention was to make was to build something that is better than the original thing that was there. So meaning, if I'm going to take down this, if I'm going to demolish this thing, and I am going to rebuild something the same or lesser than the original thing, then you're not chayav, at least not from a Torah level, like will be explained in 278. And it is and therefore it's not this is only a rabbinical prohibition. Why? Because you're putting up the same window back. You're not now. If you were gonna take it down and the guy was gonna tint it for you and put it back up, you got a problem. But if you're just taking it down, you're putting up the same window. You have not made an improvement in what's going back up, and therefore it's only a rabbinical prohibition. According to this opinion, anyway. So then, and in that case, according to this opinion, it is a second degree rabbinical prohibition. Why? Because there's the prohibition of demolishing, but you're demolishing not in order to put something better. So that's rabbinical prohibition number one. And B, you're telling the non-Jew to do it, which is also rabbinical prohibition, in which case it was permitted when discomfort is involved. Like, for example, if it's really hot, which is the reason that these people are having these windows removed, because it's really hot. Therefore, you do not need to admonish the leniencers, the people who are lenient on this, because they do have on what to rely, meaning if they rely on this opinion, that demolishing not for the sake of building something better is only a rabbinical prohibition. However, every person who knows about this, that the Alter Rebbe is telling us about this, that you know about this, you should be stringent like the first opinion, Shehi Ikor, which is the main opinion. And we should also warn the public that they are making a mistake when they take the quarters of the windows, is from the windows. They don't realize that this is a violation of a severe prohibition. I guess I'm not sure how these quarter windows were, but I guess it's like and they had windows instead of double hung windows, they were they were quadruple hung
When it
windows.
says there's a note, this is in certain European communities, the windows were divided into 4 panes, like a classic 4 pane window.
Yeah.
And when necessary, one of the panes would be removed just to get some air, like only so only
You
one
know
of
what
it would open.
It's probably I have it's like the old school window, the old timey windows, right? It's basically there's a pane, and then you have a little piece of quarter mold that's what holds it in. Like in other words, on one side it's up against, there's a little, it sticks out like on one side, and you wedge the pane against it, and then there's quarter rounds on the inside that hold it in and also make it look nice. Like there's it's a quarter round, like a piece, it's a little piece of molding that like from the side, it goes like this and then like that. If you cut it from cross section, and it's a strip like that, you put it up against, it's like called the quarter molding, and that holds it in. So usually what happens is you have these little tiny finishing nails that you use to hold those in. But then sometimes also you can if you want to remove them, whatever, you can have just a little like nail that like swivels or something like this, and they come out like, so I guess in this case they would have like a little frame or something that you could, but it's interesting because I guess it wasn't meant to do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, Bechlal, then the last note, I mean, we're skipping ahead, there's other notes that are interesting, but then the last note says that to apply the above concepts to our contemporary situation, removing a window from its frame is forbidden. Basically saying if it pops out of the frame, that's a problem.
Right, as opposed to it swings open and closed.
Yeah.
Unless obviously, like we said all the way in the beginning, if it's something that's made to constantly come in and out. So I mean, think of it like a screen door.
Right.
Right.
Right. But
would be a problem, or a storm window. It's like a storm window. That's what it's like, because a storm window, you can take it out, right, pretty easily. Pop
right.
the things, right, at the same time.
And sometimes I have to say,
go in and out regularly.
There are some of those like storm windows, whatever, when I'm trying to just open it regularly, but I'll accidentally pop it out. Like some of them are a little loose, or like they pop out too easy. But yeah, it's interesting.
But it would seem storm windows and screens and things like this would fall under this category, because they do open. You can take them out, and I'm not even talking about like with a window pin. You'd have to remove the quarter round and the nails and stuff like that. But you can just open the thing and it comes out. But they're really not. But they're not made to be opened and closed on a regular basis either. So yeah. Any other notes of interest here?
Yeah. So back in the first paragraph, there were several. So let me just. Okay. So we said basically. It's also to remove the door, right, to these different like storage pits, whatever, etc. The rationale being that the object's attached to the ground, so Bain and Seiser apply. So even though the hinges are not forcefully inserted in place and are easily removed, it's also to remove the doors of these structures, unlike the doors of kalim, like we said in the last paragraph. Sound that interesting distinction. And then we talked about that we have non-Jews could remove would remove these windows during large feasts in the summer to prevent from overheating. As the Alter Rebbe then goes on to explain, concept of excessive heat is a sort of discomfort, usually allows for certain leniencies, but there are ramifications of this concept in other contexts. So it really depends on what's going on.
By the way, it's interesting what you mentioned above is that the fact that it's connected to the ground, it doesn't make a difference if it's forceful or not, because if you remember above, and when we were talking about the whole thing with doors with hinges, right? In a doorway of a house or whatever, or of a yard or whatever, the Alter Rebbe warned. However, you have to make sure not to put the hinges on, because then you're doing baina, you're doing building. We're talking about just propping the door up, but even if it has hinges, be careful not to put the hinges in, because that's actual baina. And over there he doesn't mention sticking it in strongly. So now we know why. Because by baina, it's not it's specifically by matah b'pakish that you have the issue of strongly or not strongly by vessels. Yeah.
Then we said, because if a yid remove the windows, he would have a sin offering, meaning it's deraisa. So removing windows is a Deiraisa thing. Okay. Oh, on Shavuos the Shavuos. So Shavuos, just explain a little bit like what you said, but I think it just says just an interesting point or two. So I'm just going to read it quickly because you did explain this already, but I think this says it in an interesting way. Shavuos is a rabbinic prohibition instituted because an action resembles or could lead to the performance of a scripturally forbidden act. Instructing a non-Jew to perform a forbidden act is a Shavuos. When the task the non-Jew is instructed to perform is forbidden only according to rabbinic law in the first place, giving that instruction is considered Shavuos. The Shavuos, a compound rabbinic prohibition, and leniency is granted in certain instances, like when a mitzvah, financial loss, or discomfort is involved. And you see back in 307 for an in-depth discussion on that. I just thought that was interesting. And then, and that's it. All right. Yod Ches. Chai pizza pie.
Even vessels which are not, or kalim, I guess vessels usually it could be not just vessels. They don't like using the word vessels. I think the official word of kalim is like what's it called, like shadows or something. Imheim gedalim, if they are big. So now we're coming to this part like that you were talking about before about refrigerators. If they are big, kol kach, so much, shemachzikim arba'im sa, that they can hold the volume of 40 sa, dahainu, which what does this mean? What is 40 sa? Dahainu amma al amma, that this is 1 cubit by another cubit. Berum shalish amis, with a height of 3 amis. So an amma by an amma by 3 amis. So that would mean 3 cubic amis. Which is different than 3 amis cubed, because that
amma by amma, and then
9 cubic amis. But so it's 3 cubic amis.
It's amma by amma, and then amis. 3 cubits high by 3 amis. Yeah, right.
So it's right. So it's 3 cubic amis.
No, what are you talking about?
It's 3 cubic cubits.
No, because it's 1 by 1 by 3.
Yeah. So 1 by 1 by 1 is 1 cubic cubit.
Oh. You're
Put
saying, okay,
now
3
it's
cubic stacked on top of each other. Okay.
But another one, it's 3 cubic cubits.
Okay. now it's my brain that's not doing math properly.
Yeah, no, that's why I said not to be confused with 3 amis cubed with 3 amis cubed, because that would be 9 cubic amis or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So it's 3 cubic cubits. Imad including the walls. Beloy avi haraglayim, but not including the thickness of the legs. V'halevaz bezin. And the rims, the moldings, basically.
The surrounding rims, they call them.
Right. What's sticking out of the actual harihem ke'ayil, they are considered a structure, meaning not the rims and the feet, but going back to this thing that is more than 40 saw. And by the way, interestingly, he hasn't actually given us for modern days a definitive measurement, because it's how much is 40 saw? It's 3 cubic amas. How much is an amma? They're like a tent, and therefore, just like we know that when it comes to a tent, that erecting a tent, even though it's not connected to the ground, is still considered building. So these vessels, which are bigger than 40 saw, also are like a tent, and they do building and demolition. Those melachos do apply to them. Lefikach also little the same mayhem, and therefore, like we were thinking about before a little bit already. So therefore, too, in those cases, the rules are going to apply, not like the little vessels, but rather like building, and therefore you cannot remove their doors. Needless to say, you cannot put back their doors. Notes.
Okay, so back to 40 saw. What's cool? There's a note within a note. There's 2 notes, so they have saw underlined, and when you put the mouse over it, it brings up that a saw is a liquid measure of the Talmudic period, which is 40 saw equals 87.59 gallons, or 331.78 liters in modern measure, according to Shiurei Torah by Rav Chaim Noah. And then he says, yeah, so is a Talmudic measure of volume equal, one saw would be 8 liters or 2.1 gallons in contemporary measure. So now there's 1 cubit by 1 cubit by 3 cubits high, or of different measures, but of similar volume. Kalim of this size was singled out in many different halachic contexts and considered in a different category than other kalim. For example, you can see in kalim or oiles, mishnah kalim or mishnah oiles. And then, so therefore, it's forbidden to remove the doors at the end, right? That's our conclusion. Even though the hinges are not forcefully inserted in place and they're easily removable, nevertheless, it is prohibited to remove the doors of these items, unlike the doors of regular kalim discussed back in, subsection 16. For this reason, it's also forbidden to remove one drawer from a chest of drawers. Very practical application. You want to pull the drawer all the way out. Sometimes people want to do that. Let's say they have a drawer of silverware, right? So, okay, I'll pull it all the way out, and then I can take it. No. You can't do that on Shabbos. Can't be pulling drawers all the way out. Even though, many of them, they come off the track and back on the track very easily. It's not even like a matter of having to click it in or pop it. It just slides off and out.
Right, or the old school ones where it's just like a rod going down the middle, and it just rests on the rod when it goes in and comes out.
Right.
Yeah. That's 18.
Yep.
19. Yutaz like Umbru. So now we're going to get into the whole thing that we said before, where he said there is no building and demolishing when it comes to vessels, to kalim. Like Umbru she'ein binyan stira bekalim. We do not say that there is not building and demolishing on kalim. Ella bevinyan gerua or siras binyan gerua. Besides for when it's like garua means like worthless, but or disgusting or whatever, but meaning it's not something not
unsubstantial. Exactly.
Okay, yeah, it's besides for when it's unsubstantial building and unsubstantial demolishing. Only then do we say that there is no. It's funny how he words it with a double negative. So only there do we say that there is no building. And
the way they translate here is the above statement do not apply only to unsubstantial acts.
Right. So the only time they apply. So if it is unsubstantial building or demolishing, then it does not apply by kalim. However, if it is substantial, it does apply. So what's an example of unsubstantial demolishing or building? Like we said before, removing the door from the kli and putting it back. That putting it back is not a complete building. Since it is still at the end of the day, even though it's wedged in there, it's a separate piece from the vessel. That it's not wedged in there strongly, and you can remove it easily. And therefore, since it's not in there strongly in the first place, so taking it out is not a complete demolishing. And so too, any vessel that is made out of parts, if the parts are not, they're not strongly wedged together, then it is not considered complete demolishing when you take it apart. And it's not considered a complete building when you put it when you're putting it together. When you're putting it back together. Right. Putting it together is a different. It can be a different story. But in this case, it's putting it back together. Oh, good. He's going to talk about that. I was miscavin. But if you make a vessel from the truth is I probably just remember it from when we did it in the Mishnah Berurah or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you make a vessel from its beginning, right, and you're not putting it back together, but rather you're putting it together for the first time, binyan gomer. This is completely building. The chayav mishum baina, and he is obligated. And generally speaking, when the Alter Rebbe uses the word, or Bechlal in Halach, when they use the word chayav, you're obligated. It means from a Torah level, you are obligated for building. Vashever kli shalim,
Meaning obligated to bring a carbon, I think, is why we use the lashon.
right.
Which
But
would mean,
when
and you
he's
only bring a
chayav,
carbon for a deiraisa.
right. Well, but the truth is, and if you were warned and whatever, etc., you'd actually be God forbid,
Other stuff.
Right, other chayiv with other stuff. So vashever kli shalim, and if you break a whole vessel, harizus tiras binyan gamur. This is complete demolishing of something built. The chayiv mishum seisir, and he's obligated on a Torah level from demolishing. V'chein hatikeya ha'etz b'teich hakardim. Similarly, similarly, a person who attaches a piece of wood to a kardim is like an axe, I think. No,
Hatchet.
yeah. Chayev mishum beina. He is obligated because of building. V'chein kol tekeh eitz be'etz. So too, anybody who sticks one piece of wood into another piece of wood, you wedge together two pieces of wood. Bein shetaka b'masmir, whether he wedged it through use of, meaning how do you connect it? You use a nail to connect it. Bein shetaka be'es atzmei achenis ached, or you wedged it into the wood itself until it became one. Meaning, like if you have like a dowel or tongue and groove construction that you put together. Harizeh tiledus beina. This is a tulda of beina, right? Is an offspring of beina. The chayiv. Now remember, a tulda, even though there's the main halacha, the of halacha, the parent halacha, and then there's the child halacha. That's an extension of the halacha, not to be confused with a rabbinic prohibition. The extension, the tulda, is a Torah prohibition.
They use the word the derivative.
Derivative. Okay, we can use that also.
Derivative. Yeah, what comes out of it? Yeah, it makes sense.
V'chol hamefarik eitz tekua, and obviously corresponding to that, being that if you're chayav baina, anything that you're chayav baina, basically you do the opposite, you're doing demolishing. So anybody who takes apart to such a wood that's been either nailed together or wedged together strongly so that it becomes essentially one piece. This could be which means basically it could be nails, it could be glue, it could be just that the wood itself is made to fit in together and wedge together, or dowels, rods, pegs, etc. So anybody who takes apart such a thing, chayav mishum seisir, he is obligated on a Torah level from demolishing. Kemei haseisir binyan gamur, just like one who would demolish any complete structure, like if you go and demolish a house or a shed in the yard or whatever it is. This is so when it comes to kalim, you have the same problem, unless you are doing something. So this it puts into light all this thing we're talking about a door before. By a vessel, it's because it's a separate piece and it's not something that's wedged into to the point where it's mamish one part. Notes.
Okay, so we said basically if you're going to make something new, then you're building in a complete sense and it's chayiv. Because as we see in Shinyu Dalid 314 subsection 17, now that I mentioned, actually there are authorities who did not accept this position, that is deiraisa, but they still prohibited making such kalim because doing so involves the forbidden labor of makabeh patish, pleading an article. So it's not boine. There are others that say you're not allowed to because it could be makabeh patish. So very interesting. But the Alter Rebbe is taking a stance here by saying, he holds that no, it's actual boine, not just makabeh patish putting something together. It's boine. And then so we said
there's a big the nafkamina there. How do you say nafkamina in English? The practical difference there essentially is that
legal discrepancy.
If there's building, there's demolishing. So there's an actual practical difference, because fine, if you're chayav from the Torah for makabeh patish, what's the difference between that and being chayav for baina for building? The difference is that you're also chayav for taking apart by baina. That's right. The practical.
I would say legal discrepancy is what I would say.
Yeah.
Because it's all practical. We're saying, well, talking halacha,
right.
But I mean, right. So say it's more, but there's actual legal difference, and how it, yeah. Okay, so then we say so by seiser. So he says, go see back in 17, which cites a difference of opinion concerning whether to be liable according to Eid Isa, or you have to demolish with the intent of rebuilding an improved structure. We mentioned that back in a Sifra Fugo. And then we said, so the same token, okay. Just to point out, and then we said, by the same token, one who forcefully inserts a piece of wood into a hatchet to serve as a handle is boina, and he just points out that that's as understood by Rashi, which I don't know if you remember, I think it was the Mishabur who brought up, the difference in opinion between Rashi and some other opinions. I think we'll understand it differently. But that's it. All right, Chaf.
And even if a vessel made of parts in taka prakov, if he stuck together the parts, the hainu shehid kam bechezek, that he wedged them strongly in such a way that you need strength and expertise.
Nice.
This is also totally this is mamish building. The chayiv mishum beina, and he's obligated on a Torah level from building. Im asilis kaim harbe, if it's made to stick around for a while, meaning if this is a thing that's made to stay together. The imeni asilis kaim harbe, and if it's not made to stick around for a long time, harizeh binyan arai. This is a temporary build structure that you're building. Basically, it's building a temporary thing. The awesome seifrim, and it's still prohibited, but this is a rabbinical prohibition. Which as we know, there's one difference, and that would be, let's say this is something that has to do with a mitzvah or losing money or discomfort, right? So in this case, you would be allowed to tell a non-Jew to do it for you, whereas if it's made to stay together permanently, you would not be allowed to, even for discomfort or a mitzvah, etc. Unless it is not intended to remain assembled at all, as will be explained. And that's, I think, like you brought up a while back, like where the whole question of Legos comes in, is which category does it fall under? That first of all, does it need umanus, right? Because we said over here, and it has to be something that needs expertise. Then there's also the fact of how long is it made to stick together. And those are all things that come into that whole Lego scenario that you brought up.
This time you were mechaven to the compiler of the notes, because that's literally one of the notes they bring.
Oh, really? I was just being miscaven to the fact that it just connected to the fact that you brought this up on a prior.
I was gonna say when we got to the note. Now my favorite example of this also here. Yeah. But anyway, but first he goes on the strength and professional expertise in manos. So we'll see in the following sif, which is also where it explains the whole thing of the whole Derabanan temporary structure. Not to be remain assembled at all, but also, it talks about this, and from which it appears that assembling a kli held together by screws constitutes building, even if assembling it does not require professional expertise. So it's your regular IKEA that anybody could do. It's also worthy of emphasis that there are authorities, see Tehillah David, who mentioned that assembling a kli from component parts for the first time is forbidden, even if it does not require professional expertise, which we did, for those that remember, we did bring up back in Mishnah Berurah. Okay, right. So now we're talking about building if it's intended to remain assembled for a prolonged period of time. Talmud Yerushalmi, and you see section 279, which talk about this. Now, this ruling has ramifications with regards to children playing with Lego or other, off-brand, what you call it, right. Not exclusively that brand. There is reason for leniency with regard to structures that are meant to be assembled and taken apart frequently, as is the usual case when younger children build. Which, by the way, I'd like to point out right off the bat the difference between something like Lego versus some other types of blocks that don't click together,
like mega blocks.
Magnetite. Well, there's
not magnet. There's mega blocks. There's mega blocks. They look like a giant Lego,
large,
but they sit on top of each other. They don't actually click.
Okay, no, but there's larger blocks that click. But I'm saying just regular blocks, wooden blocks. They just literally, it's balanced. You tap the whole thing, it's gonna fall over. Or the what's the ones that look like log cabin?
Lincoln logs, yeah.
Lincoln logs, right? So I think there's subtle differences in, do they stay together or not? versus Legos, you click it together, you could pick it up and move it like a toy, etc. So there is reason for leniency with regards to structures that are meant to be assembled and taken apart frequently, as is the usual case when younger children build. However, there are instances where elaborate structures that are meant to last are made with Lego. I mean, I had a friend who he got his Lego set, he built it once, never takes it apart. It's a whole thing. It took him hours or days to put together the entire Star Wars Death Star. Like, he's not taking that thing apart, Like,
right. No, but and that's at the extreme. I remember that me and my brother Levi, and I think now my kids have it in a giant suitcase, all the parts. But we used to build, but then we would take from the space thing and the castle thing and everything, and we'd mix them up or whatever, and we'd make our own things. But it wasn't like we would just put it and take it apart. We would be building like this whole city thing, and
we
then
made
we
our
would play
own
with
spaceship
it
out of random parts. But there were certain spaceships, like my brother made one. For months it stayed. It stayed as such. So, however, there are instances where elaborate structures that are meant to last are made with Lego. Assembling such structures on Shabbos involves a more serious question. There are also ramifications with regards to adding to or removing a leaf from a table or the like. But that's a very practical shaila. So many people do this on Shabbos. So now there is no difficulty if one intends to undo the change over the course of Shabbos. If, however, one intends for the change to remain for an extended time, it's a question about whether it's permitted to add or remove the leaf on Shabbos. The following subsection mentions this point, but that's a very serious shaila that I didn't really think about.
But by the way, it also depends on the leaf, because some leaves click in place and some just drop on there and they're just sitting there. So it also depends. Yeah.
But I would say, Lamaisa, I think most of the time when we put leaves, it's just really for the day. It's really just, Mom's just for Shabbos, for the Shabbos meal.
Not only that, I'll give you an example. We just had that, right? We were just, when we went for Gimel Tammuz, the fire, etc. Right?
Right, your daughter has
we were about my daughter's. Okay. The reason she has a leaf is because she's in a Brooklyn apartment. And Brooklyn apartments aren't known for their expansive space. So when you have guests, you extend it. But then immediately when you're done with that, people want to sit, read, the baby wants to run around. You right immediately after the meal, you put it back because it's in your way.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
Chaf Aleph, lefikal kol klisho prakim shenisparik asr chacham nachzir b'Shabbos. Any vessel of parts that came apart, the chachamim did not allow you to put it back together on Shabbos. Afilu ein mahadke ela ma'at, even if you only wedge it a little bit, be'inyan shu rafli ve'ein rafli, in such a way that it's loose but not loose, meaning it's semi-loose. It's not like. It's not like wedged strong, but it's because they were worried, right, that maybe you will come to wedge it strongly. But if he's not wedging it at all, but he's leaving it loose, altogether loose, mamish completely loose, mutter, then you're allowed. This that it's allowed when it's loose is when it's the way of this vessel to be loose this way all the time. However, if its way is to be wedged strongly, even though now he's putting it completely loose, also he cannot return it to its place. We're worried that maybe he's going to put it there. So basically, only if it's loose and it's made to be loose. Although he could also be, in theory, here talking about, there was like the middle one between Rafui and Haduk. There was like put it's attached but not wedged, so it's not clear if meaning it's clear that it has to be loose now, and it's clear that it cannot have been that its regular way is not to be wedged strongly. But what if it's loose now and it's made to be wedged not so strongly? I'm not sure.
Well, there are some notes on it, but I don't remember. There were two
in the Mishnah Berurah. We saw there were two opinions. One opinion is that if it's loose and it's made to be loose, then fine. And the other opinion says no, if it's loose and it's made to be like medium but not mamish stuck in is also fine, so long as it's not made to be stuck in. Anyway,
I'll throw this in right now. Basically, he brings on a note from 279 that kalim assembled from parts that can break when they fall should not be handled on Shabbos because they might fall. And if they fall, it's feared that the parts will become separated and one might forget and reattach them on Shabbos.
Like the candelabra that we were
this,
talking about.
Right. So you have these definitions of what is it that it's securely but loosely, insecure, not to, it depends on Lamaisa what it could lead to. Are you gonna mess with it? Are you gonna?
Oh, actually, he's gonna talk about the thing that I think he's gonna answer in the next paragraph. The thing that
there are authorities who maintain the couple component parts. Yeah. He gets into it. Okay. I don't know if we're gonna have time to really even finish this sip. So
yeah, it's a long.
We're just gonna have to start. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to start from 21.
Start again. Yeah. Fine. Very good. So okay, good. So I think at this point let's call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll start again from 21. Tonight we have a different shear, so we'll be doing that. So Mir Hashem tomorrow morning around this time and Amir Hashem with good feeling tummies.
Amen. All right.